It's the dead of winter on our little mountain, and our radiant heat has been up and running for a little while.
And we have been floored with the results.
Anyhow. We're excited to tell you about our radiant heat and how it's working. First, check out this footage of the installation, how it all went in underneath the concrete floor and putting together the manifold.
Hey, that was a great joke.
Anyhow, so we reached back in the archives here for some old footage. I had my best friend Nathan come out from Kentucky, and he helped for about a week on the house, and this is us laying down the PEX piping for the radiant heat system. So the PEX is just 1/2 inch type B PEX. It's rated for under slab radiant systems. And the idea is when you lay down this PEX, you don't have any connections underneath the slab, because those could be weak points. So all of these loops are continuous without any fixture points at all. They're just rounded edges. We have 4 zones marked out in the house to be able to isolate where the heat is going, which is definitely a good thing to do, because if somebody's not spending time in a certain part of the house, it doesn't make sense to heat it. So here we are putting out the 4 zones of the radiant heat, again with the 1/2 inch PEX type B. All that PEX piping comes up above the ground into the utility room, and this is the manifold system. Unfortunately, I lost some of the old footage of me putting this together, but you can see me assembling the final pieces. We'll go over how that all connects here in just a minute, but this is just the process of me finishing up all those connections.
Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and show you a little bit of a close-up here about this connection, how this PEX will go into the manifold. And what we have here, obviously we have our PEX, and then we've got, this is the tightening nut right here that'll slide over, and this is a little crimp ring, and then this is the connection inside. You'll have the nut there. Got your little crimp ring here that'll tighten down, and then you have the connection there. So this crimp ring here will tighten as you tighten down this nut here. So as I turn this nut, it's adding pressure on that crimp ring and making an airtight, watertight seal.
What? Is this noise bothering your video?
And then we finish making the connections from the PEX out of the ground into the manifold.
Alright friends, moment of truth. I'm about to hook up a water line from our water hydrant out by the well house. Hooking this up to the manifold. I already have a hose down here in the bottom for the water to go out. I've been watching about 6 different YouTube videos about 2 or 3 times each, just trying to see how everybody else is doing it. That is on. Right now, I've got this blue hose is my incoming water, fresh water from the well. This green hose is for the water going out. So this can accommodate 6 loops, but we're only using 4. So I have both of these tightened down on both sides of the manifold. So from everything I've read, instruction manuals, watching videos, water should not try to pass through these valves. I hope not. If they do, we're gonna have a little minor flood on our hands. So I ran fresh water from the well through the through this hose, the blue hose, for about 5 minutes. I want to make sure any nastiness is out of it. Ideally, you don't want anything but pure water in the system. I want to do this zone by zone. Everything I've watched has you doing one zone at a time. I'm going to turn off 4, 3, and 2 and just start with zone 1. The water is coming in this blue hose into the top side of the manifold and down and into the system. And then it comes up from the floor into this valve and out this hose. So right now outside, this hose is sending out water that's coming in. So a lot of people say to run it for 5 to 15 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and run it for about 15 minutes on each line. and hopefully by the time we get to the end, all the air has been purged from the system, and we'll continue to fill up the whole circuit at that point.
All right, so let's go ahead and do an overview walkthrough of our system. That is EcoSmart 18 electric tankless water heater. We go up, there's just a valve there just to shut off and isolate. We have a pressure gauge up at the top, and then we have an air separator to help separate out the air bubbles, and the expansion tank. And then there's another shutoff valve going down into a fill and drain valve and a pump, which we're not using, but I'll get back to that later. Another drain and fill valve, and then it goes down into the manifold. This manifold is made by Bluefin, and again, it accommodates 6 zones, but we're only using 4. So the water will go down into the concrete slab, then back up, back into the manifold, and then it travels to the right and on through the circuit. You can see we have a temperature gauge at the top and at the bottom, so we can see that the temperature going in is about 140 degrees, which is what the heater's set to. And then as it comes out of the floor, it does lose some heat, obviously, and it comes out of the floor at about 85 degrees, and that's all dependent on how fast and how much water is moving through the system. And then we come over to another pressure gauge, so you can see how the pressure is working. This is a particle strainer to make sure anything is strained out of the water. It has like a little net down there that helps capture really anything that could be in the water, which again, you don't want much in there, so that's a good little strainer to have on your system. And then we go up to another pump, and beyond that, we go up into the tankless electric water heater. So the pumps, funny story, I saw a bunch of people installing 2 pumps on their system, and they probably had a good reason for that. I went ahead and bought 2 pumps and installed both pumps. However, I realized that I didn't need both of them. This pump over here on the left doesn't need to be running for my particular system. I don't know if it's due to the size of my zones or whatever it is, but I get enough circulation from the other pump. So that pump on the right is the only one that's actually working, and I figured instead of uninstalling the old pump that I already installed, I would leave it there, and worst comes to worst, if the other pump on the right breaks down, I can go ahead and just turn that off and turn the pump on the left on. So no harm, no foul. Now, as we look down towards the manifold, you can see these little knobbies here, and these can be adjusted. At the top, we can see the flow of the water. It's measured by gallons per minute, and you can really adjust it and fine-tune your system to make sure you're getting heat where you want it. So these white knobs down here have a plus minus on them, and I can turn them right and left to restrict and open up the water flow in that individual zone. You can see the meter going up and down as I twist that. And again, it's really convenient. We can turn off individual zones. So if we don't want heat in one part of the house, I can just go to that zone, turn the little white knob on it, and completely close it off, and no more hot water is flowing through that system. Then you're concentrating more water in the other 3 systems.
We could have done propane, but we chose not to since we're up on the mountain and we didn't want to be at the mercy of somebody bringing propane to us.
So here we are at the breaker panel just inside the utility room, and the EcoSmart 18 is an 18 kilowatt electric tankless water heater, and it requires 2 40 amp breakers in the panel, and from those 40 amp breakers we run 8 gauge wire, the big thick wire, all the way back to the electric tankless water heater. So it goes all the way around and back up to the unit. It was a pretty simple installation, getting the wiring done. There is the other electric tankless water heater. It's a 27 kilowatt that goes to the kitchen and the shared bath. For those interested, we actually have a 400 amp service being run to our house.
So the floors are really exceeding our expectations, I would say.
Absolutely.
It was getting pretty cold, and when we finally got them hooked up, the amount of heat that is coming out of the floors is surprising. I remember asking Don before we put them in, like, how much heat will actually come from the floors? And he said, I don't think that they're going to feel really warm, but it'll just kind of raise the temperature in the room, but they're actually warm. And as soon as we got them heated up, the girls were just laying on the floors
Just sprawling out.
because they feel so good. It's like spa floors. I love it. And it actually is heating the house.
Completely.
Now that we just have one layer of spray foam everywhere, and then we're working on the fiberglass insulation. But just the spray foam everywhere, it's warm in here. It's like 25 degrees outside, and I'm not wearing a winter coat.
It's cozy. We were worried about getting the wood stove in and using that to help supply additional heat because we didn't know how good the radiant floors would be.
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out we don't need a wood stove. We'll probably get one eventually.
I still want one.
For aesthetics, to burn some wood in the house.
And I like to be super warm.
Yes, super warm. But it is plenty warm inside our house as it stands now.
So when we were down to it with construction and we were trying to decide, because we're building with cash, we were trying to decide what we could keep in, what we had to get rid of, and we almost didn't do the floors. And we've said several times how glad we are that we did do it, that we paid for that. I mean...
Yeah, definitely. For anybody that's been following our build project, and I know there's a few of you out there from social media and whatnot, a lot of people ask the question, should we spring for the radiant heat in the floor?
Yes.
And absolutely. And
absolutely.
We had the idea that let's put the pipe in first, the PEX piping underneath the slab, and then we can save up to buy the heater and all the components for it later.
Right.
And obviously we've had it all hooked up now, but it's a no-brainer. If you are considering radiant heat in your new, especially pole barn home, do it. Absolutely.
It's incredible. And there's no single thing that we've done in here yet that I've been like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we did this. The floors have been that. It's just changed everything.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that about covers it as far as our radiant heat system goes. If you have any questions, leave them down below in the comments. Like I said before, I'm not an expert. I just copied other people, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about it. Again, this does a great job heating our home, and we're really happy with it, and we're looking forward to many, many winters of it working really well for us. If you haven't yet, please check out our Pole Barn House playlist that we have on our YouTube channel. It goes all the way from excavating for the site to all the things we're doing now to finish the interior of the house. So we'll see you on one of those videos or on the next one. And until then, thanks for checking out our little mountain life.
And we have been floored with the results. Go ahead, man. It's not that funny of a joke.
No, it's not. All right. It's the dead of winter.
Dead.